Fate of the Furious is the 8th installment of the Fast and the Furious franchise. We're at 8 movies now, 2 more until they get to 10. We all thought they were ending after the ending of 7, but nope, they're determined to get to 10 entries, except this time they changed it up a little bit because Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, who's always been about family, has now turned against his family because a woman named Cypher, played by Charlize Theron, is making him work for her. We don't know what that reason is, but also Dom's family, his team, doesn't know what the reason is, but they have to stop him. So they have to enlist with the help of Kurt Russell's Mr. Nobody, Scott Eastwood, and returning villain Jason Statham to help take down Dom and Cypher before they do some cyber terrorist stuff. The Fast and the Furious has had a really interesting history. The first 4 movies weren't really that good. They kind of had an identity crisis, but then when the 5th movie came out, it's like they finally realized what they were always meant to be, and 6 and 7 has followed in that trend, and they've been really good. Have they been Oscar-worthy or some of the best movies of all time? Absolutely not, but for what they actually are outstanding. I was a little worried about the Fate of the Furious, though, because of the ending to 7. I thought it ended really perfectly, but since Universal really does know what these movies should be, and also because they had F. Gary Gray directing it, I was super pumped for it. F. Gary Gray, Straight Outta Compton, The Italian Job, another car movie. I thought for sure this movie was in really good hands, and once again, this falls in line with Fast 5, 6, and 7. This movie is a lot of fun. And when I say that this movie's dumb but it's fun, it's not like those typical guilty pleasure movies where it's just so bad that you're enjoying it. This movie actually is very well directed bad, if you know what I mean. There's some goofy stuff going on. Cars surround a dude to protect him from an explosion. Rubber bullets cannot stop a man because he's extremely buff. And at one point, someone has to turn their car around and look out the back to drive because the front of their car is on fire and about to explode because their engine is practically a bomb. Stuff like that happens in this movie. The laws of physics will sometimes apply, but this movie is not set in stone in our reality. It's in their own little world. Either you're going to be on board with this and you're going to have fun, or you're not going to like it because it's not the typical Oscar serious movie or a serious action film. But once again, even though these movies technically are dumb, they're really well directed dumb, and F. Gary Gray really brought something director-wise to this movie. The action scenes are a lot of fun, but what really surprised me is that the standout scenes weren't car scenes. The car sequences were a lot of fun, especially one that takes place in Iceland, and the New York City chase was pretty fun too. But the 2 standout action scenes in this movie were actually fight scenes. The first one being a prison break scene involving Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham, which was incredible. Like, pretty much explaining why these two are freaking awesome. Dwayne Johnson is incredibly muscular, he's beating dudes left and right, and then you have Jason Statham, who's just incredibly quick and agile, like climbing against walls and jumping down on people. Like, these men are so good, and in this scene, they really show off how incredible they are. But then you have my favorite action scene in the movie, and it involves a plane and Jason Statham. That's all I can really say about this scene. But that scene was the standout for me, and Jason Statham actually was pretty funny in that scene too. And I knew Jason Statham could be funny because Spy, he was hysterical in that, so it was nice to see him be funny again in another movie. And it was also great seeing him and Dwayne Johnson bounce off each other with insults because they have a history in Furious 7, so seeing them make fun of each other so much was hysterical. Dwayne Johnson was priceless in this movie, and Jason Statham was a riot. Another duo I really liked in this movie were Roman and Tej, Ludacris and Tyrese Gibson. These two have always been really fun with each other. Even Too Fast, Too Furious, which is an awful movie, those two were like the best parts in it, so I'm glad that they've been continuing to have these two banter with each other because they are really funny together. And Roman is just hysterical to me all the time because in these action scenes you have everyone who's taking it so seriously and saying these lines, and then you just have him screaming like, oh my god, this is insane. Like, he always makes me laugh. And then sometimes it will result in Tej throwing an insult at him and him yelling, shut up, Tej! And you have Kurt Russell, who is having the time of his life in this movie. He's not driving any cars, he's not involved in any of the big action scenes, but when he's on screen, he's just messing with people. He's messing with Roman, he's messing with Scott Eastwood, he's just having the time of his life. He's not really taking any of this seriously. There's one point where you'd think someone would be afraid, but in his position, he's just like, hey, you know what's funny about that? He didn't care. It was just fun seeing Kurt Russell pretty much just mess around on set. I could tell he was having the time of his life with this movie. But honestly, what really surprised me, like acting-wise, was Vin Diesel. Now, a lot of people like to make fun of Vin Diesel because the family and the weird voice, but in this movie, the reason why he's working with Charlize Theron is it's not because of brainwashing, I thought it was that, but it's actually a little something serious. But it actually brought some emotion to Dominic Toretto, and I actually felt that emotion in the movie, and I was really surprised by that. There was a certain amount of emotion Vin Diesel was actually bringing to these movies that I was surprised. Another thing I was really surprised about was Charlize Theron actually was more brutal than I thought, and it's not because she's a very violent woman, it's just dialogue-wise, she was very ruthless in some ways, especially one scene where I was just like, whoa. She was actually really good. There are actually a couple more surprises other than those two people. There's other things that happen in this movie that caught me off guard. I won't spoil it though, but let's just say if you're a fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise, you will be in love with those things. Now, I've pretty much already stated reasons to go see this movie. It's fun, and the characters you like are still good. A lot of the fans of the franchise, that's all they need to hear. They don't need to hear about problems. For example, a problem I had with this movie is that they set up some things like conflict-wise between two people, or just the whole situation that I thought just got kind of ignored when action scenes started, or just kind of got rushed just to get to these action scenes. A problem like that is not going to affect anyone wanting to see these movies. I don't even really need to mention them, but I do need to explain why this is my least favorite out of the good Fast and the Furious movies. This movie's still good, but it's my least favorite for sure, and I'll explain why. One kind of small problem I had was that the CGI at times got really noticeable. Like, there's a moment where cars are just losing their minds, just crashing into each other, all barreling up together, and I thought that looked really fake, which kind of took me out of the moment a lot. The majority of it does take place in the New York City chase. Other times it wasn't so bad. It's mainly in that one sequence. Though fun and entertaining, the CGI took me out of it a little bit. There's a little too much. And Scott Eastwood's character in this movie, I was honestly kind of annoyed by him. Like, his whole character is pretty much he's this stuck-up government guy who has to learn to not take any of this seriously, which is actually pretty funny. But it's just his jokes that he has when he tries to mess with Roman a bit. It just really didn't make me laugh. I was kind of irritated with him, honestly. The rest of the characters in this movie are all really fun to watch, and they all have nice little things going on. And then you'd have Scott Eastwood, who has to chime in with some line of dialogue that was poorly delivered, or a joke that was not told well, and I couldn't take it. Now, my final problem with this movie is something that can't really be fixed by inserting something or something they could have changed in the script. It's just a problem that really makes me appreciate what a certain person has done for the past few films, and that is the absence of Paul Walker in this movie. I felt it a lot. Because there was a certain amount of heart that he brought with those other movies, and in Fate of the Furious, though I did feel some emotion with what Vin Diesel's subplot was going on, it wasn't the same kind of emotion that Paul Walker brought. He brought a kind of sincere performance, especially with his family going on with Mia, and I always thought of him as the most relatable one out of them in those movies, and I always really connected with him, and I thought he had the most heart in these movies. And Fate of the Furious, it just really isn't the same without that heart, and it's not something that they can change. It's not really something that they can add in like a new character. It's just something that will make these movies never feel the same way again, and it really makes me appreciate what Paul Walker did for the series. And it was a big fear of mine going in, will Paul Walker's absence be missed? And though they did have a nice little tribute to the character in there, you can definitely feel the absence, and it really doesn't feel the same. That being said though, this movie is a ton of fun. The action is all over the place. It's bonkers, but it's so much fun to watch. The car action scenes they're doing really well, but also the fight scenes were so well directed. F. Gary Gray did a fantastic job with the action scenes, and also Vin Diesel did a surprising job with his performance, and the characters are all really good. And if you're a fan of the Fast and the Furious movies, you will overall enjoy this film. There's so many moments that will make you laugh, and you're going to be on the edge of your seat with entertainment. I'm going to give the Fate of the Furious a B, though it is my least favorite out of the newer Fast and the Furious movies that actually got good. I was still very entertained with this movie. The action is so fun to watch. It's just that the same heart that was felt in the other movies was severely lacking in this film, I thought. But if you've seen the Fate of the Furious, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and I'm waiting for the Last Jedi trailer to show up. I won't be at home this weekend, so I'm hoping I don't have to do an audio trailer review for it, but that might be the case. Either way, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.